Now that you have a vision and operating model established, you want to ensure you have a suitable environment. On one end, that's ensuring you have a smooth upgrade process so end users can leverage Tableau's innovation cycles. If you sense trouble here, draw up a plan with your technical account manager ASAP. You don't want to be the client stuck on version 10.5 because upgrades are overwhelming. On the other end, it's ensuring the server is performant. Agility is about avoiding that loading circle of death and understanding that all dashboard slowdowns are either a product of an under-resourced server or poor dashboard design. Proactive monitoring allows you to hypothesize the root cause of your slowdowns and act accordingly to avoid deterring users with slow performance. To illustrate, let's walk you through one of our customers' experiences. This customer had a 4-person analytics COE supporting around 5,000 active users, and they had been receiving an outcry that Tableau was far too slow. A look under the hood confirmed their fears. Their users were experiencing an average dashboard load time of 21 seconds, with much of that content taking hundreds of seconds and some outliers taking even thousands of seconds to load. At this point, we take a look at the supporting hardware. With over 220 cores of hardware for 5,000 active users, we can be confident that the server has more than enough resources, and that these slowdowns are a result of poor user dashboard design. The COE could now focus on implementing a performance improvement framework before Tableau and slow became completely synonymous. If you're unsure if your hardware is sized appropriately, do speak to your technical account manager. They can make sure that you have enough resources. The 4 pillars of this framework are 1. Monitoring performance KPIs. 2. Improving content with performance best practices. 3. Enabling the community to self-serve on performance obstacles. And 4. Enforcing governance rules to keep the server performant once you've cleaned it. For step 1, take a minute to think. Do you know the answer to the following questions? What is the average load time of your dashboards? What is defined as slow? What percentage of your management or client-facing dashboards are slow? If you can't answer these questions, you'll struggle to align your stakeholders around data-backed facts, and the perception around performance will default to the anecdotal opinions of the highest paid complainer. Alignment is key to improving performance systematically, so the first step is monitoring and publishing performance KPIs. We break down the monitoring piece into 2 pieces. First, start with the most important metric, dashboard load time. This will be the source of truth for the overall health of your dashboard speed and act as your baseline to compare any future improvements against. Improving the overall load time from 21 seconds to 15 seconds is significant, but to your end users, 15 seconds is still just slow. Monitor trends over time to capture these improvements. And secondly, you'll want to be able to identify which workbooks are most struggling with performance so that we can get them the help they need. To illustrate, we've taken the template our customer used, redacted it, and published it as an accelerator on our Tableau exchange for everyone else to use. Let's look at how they set up their monitoring. At this point, you should be seeing the page of the accelerator. If you choose to go down this route, here's all the information you need to find the data source from GitHub, swap in your fields, your data, and make this accelerator your very own. So as you can see here, the top half here is all about KPIs. Your average load time is 8.1 seconds. This is how it breaks down by site. This was very important for our client because one of their sites was management facing, and so they were extra motivated to make sure that that was highly performing. They can see trends over time, and they also get a sense of what the overall requests and items on their server are. And then on this bottom half, this is where they can go to identify troublesome dashboards. And so right now we're seeing all 2,938 items, but how do we filter this down to the most important ones that need help? We could start by saying, I want to look at every dashboard that's taking longer than 15 seconds to load on average. And I want to make sure that it's being used. It's not something that's just sitting in the corner somewhere. So only show me the views that have at least 50 requests in the past week. And just like that, with 2 inputs, we've managed to bring down our world of 2,938 dashboards down to the short list of 15 items that need our help the most. This is going to be great for our next step. So let's go back to our deck. Now, by monitoring, you've identified which dashboards need help. Now what? Someone with performance best practice knowledge will need to go in and actually improve the dashboards. This step is about defining your organization's approach. Where it starts depends on how you answer the following questions. Do you have the internal expertise needed to diagnose and improve slow dashboards? And do those experts have bandwidth to help their colleagues in need? If the answer is yes, then this step will be about designing touch points to connect experts with struggling users. If the answer is no, it will be very challenging to improve content internally. Find a trusted partner to improve your list of slow dashboards one by one, document their techniques, and share the learnings with your centralized team. As your centralized team ramps up, they can shoulder more performance responsibility and scale that knowledge onto the next step, enabling the community. Your centralized teams now understand common performance pitfalls. It's not scalable for them to work on every performance project, so it's time to repurpose their lessons and ensure your users have the knowledge and tools to self-serve their performance obstacles. Start by taking the learnings from our last step and incorporating them into existing analytics community engagements, such as user group meetings, analytics academies, and competitions. The success stories shared at these engagements will drive the message home that users have control over the performance of their dashboards. Next, equip users with the tools to diagnose and improve their workbooks. One of our clients found a very clever way to approach this, combining Tableau's metadata API with a custom Python script that graded dashboards along 12 common performance variables. They created a console for their community that would help identify struggling dashboards and immediately provide suggested improvements. Fortunately, we've taken the template our customer used, redacted it, and published it onto the Tableau Exchange for all to see. Let's go ahead and dive in. A little bit different from the last accelerator, this will require a Python script installation unless you guys have some advanced Python analysts yourself. So we'll require a little bit of work with professional services, but other than that, will be relatively simple to introduce. So as you can see, it's pretty much identical to the dashboard load times accelerator with our KPIs along the top and our navigation panel to identify struggling workbooks along the bottom. But you'll see the slight but very powerful enhancement on the right-hand side called design score. And so when we look at item 980 here and see that it takes 105 seconds to load, previously you'd say, okay, that's great, but now what do we do? Well, with the Python script reading the 12 performance variables on the back end, we have the ability to click right into item 980 and understand which variables need improvement, which variables should be considered revising, and what is in good shape. And so by hovering over, I can see how their grades relate to common best practices. And so for context filters, I can quickly see that they have 84 context filters in their workbook. Now, context filters are a heavy calculation, and we typically target a value of 1 or less. And so as a COE, you can immediately reach out to owner 146 over here and say, hey, look, if you need these context filters, we'd recommend that you contextualize them in the data prep stage. Also, we noticed you have a live connection and that you have a lot of LOD calculations. Typically, when these are paired together, you're going to see some performance issues. And just like that, from a centralized perspective, we're able to approach our users not just from an accusatory, you have slow content perspective, but from the partner perspective of, hey, we see you're struggling, and here's some ways to potentially help you out. Publishing and driving awareness of these tools will empower users to take their dashboard performance into their own hands and allow you to hold them accountable to the rules set in our next step, enforcing governance. Now that users have the appropriate tools and knowledge, you can start holding them accountable to performance thresholds. Start by deciding the rules that work for your organization. An example could be, if a piece of content takes longer than 35 seconds to load, it will be moved off the production environment to a sandbox until performance meets acceptable thresholds. If it's longer than 10 seconds, it will remain in production, but must go through the performance improvement process defined in step 2. And if it's less than 10 seconds, congratulations, you're in production. Consider your server's standard load times before adopting these exact numbers. Thresholds should be challenging enough to motivate your users for improvement, but not so challenging that it may demotivate users from trying. Once your rules are defined, you'll need to enforce them. Use data-driven alerts to know the moment dashboards become non-compliant, and use the content migration tool to seamlessly move content across environments as performance dictates. As your deployment's governance capabilities around performance mature, you may see subsets of these rules revolving around different audiences. The 35-10-10 split works for internal use cases, but stricter guidelines may need to be in place for anything management or client-facing. Inversely, you may be more flexible with content in your sandbox. These rules should be communicated to your users early and often as part of their responsibilities, with the message that performant content is no longer a nice to have, it's a mandatory requirement. So let's go back to our client. Leveraging the 4 pillars of the framework, our customer was able to reduce the average dashboard load times from 21 seconds down to 6 seconds, despite seeing an increase of 1,600 active users and over 10,000 requests. They addressed concerns of the business groups looking to flee the Tableau platform. They boosted accountability for developers to build content with performance in mind, and they created a system to regularly monitor, improve, enable, and enforce performance best practices.